The cameras flashed, the crowd froze, and just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
It happens so fast,
It really does, but imagine leaning into that spotlight, and instead of soaking it up, the star completely retreats. I mean, they get trapped in a physical and mental prison of their own making.
A total nightmare.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today, we are taking a really profound deep dive into a story that is, it's pretty heartbreaking, but incredibly important.
Yeah, exactly. The title of today's deep dive is After Everything She Survived, Hayden Panettiere is still haunted by this.
Which is such a powerful headline.
Right. We are looking at her journey following the sudden tragic death of her younger brother, Jansen, back in 2023. And our stack of sources today is huge. We're pulling from entertainment interviews, from Extra TV and E! News.
We also dug into some really great insights about their sibling dynamic from Nicki Swift and Music Times.
And to really understand what happened, we're bringing in a detailed medical explainer from The Independent.
Because the mission of this deep dive is to figure out how physical health, mental health, and just profound trauma all intersect.
Exactly. We want to look at what Hayden's journey of surviving this catastrophic grief can teach all of you listening about moving forward, warts and all.
Yeah, it's not just a Hollywood story.
No, not at all. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp the fallout of this tragedy, we first have to understand the unique crucible that Hayden and Jansen's bond was forged in.
Right, the absolute pressure cooker of child stardom.
Yes. I was looking at this retrospective from Nicki Swift, and it made it so clear that Jansen wasn't just like the little brother hanging around the craft services table.
Oh, definitely not. He was in it.
He was a working actor. He did Disney projects. He was in Tiger Cruise with Hayden. He did voice work for Ice Age, The Meltdown.
Which means they were navigating this bizarre alternate universe together. When you are a kid in that industry, normal developmental milestones are just stripped away.
Yeah, you're treated like a commodity by adults.
Exactly. So your sibling becomes your entire reality check. They become the only person on Earth who actually understands the rejection and the distorted reality of fame.
They fuse together, and you can so clearly see that dynamic in this older TV Guide interview they did back in 2007. They were just bantering like totally normal teenagers.
I love that clip.
Right. Hayden was teasing him, and Jansen joked that when he turned 14, he would, quote, beat the she-take mushrooms out of her.
That is amazing.
It's hilarious, but it really shows how grounded they kept each other. And Hayden loved playing that protective older sister role. During the peak of her hit show Heroes, she actually auctioned off a set visit for $4,000 just to raise money for Jansen's school.
Wow, she really leveraged her fame for him.
She did. She literally called him half of my soul. But then, on February 19, 2023, that profound bond was shattered. Jansen died suddenly at his apartment in New York. He was only 28 years old.
It's unimaginable.
And this is where the Independent's medical breakdown is so crucial, because the cause of death was listed as cardiomegaly coupled with aortic valve complications.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that cardiomegaly, which is an enlarged heart, isn't actually a disease itself. It's an indicator.
An indicator of what?
Of the heart working way too hard. The aortic valve wasn't functioning properly, so his heart muscle had to pump incredibly hard to get blood to the body. And over time, it physically grew larger and thicker to compensate.
It's like driving a car where the engine is constantly running in the red, but the dashboard check engine light never turns on until the engine just completely fails.
That is the perfect analogy. And terrifyingly, the symptoms of this are often entirely hidden, or they disguise themselves as mild asthma or just fatigue. A 28-year-old doesn't think his heart is failing.
So how does the suddenness of an invisible medical condition like this impact the grieving process compared to, say, a prolonged visible illness?
Well, the lack of warning leaves survivors desperately searching for answers. When a loss is that sudden and that invisible, the human mind struggles to process the randomness of it.
So they absorb the blame instead.
Precisely, which sets up this really dark transition into the mental health struggles involved. But wait until you hear how her body physically reacted to all this later on. It is actually shocking.
It really is. Because physical illnesses like this leave so many unanswered questions, the grieving mind searches for alternative explanations. Which brings us to the invisible mental battles Jansen was fighting and the massive guilt Hayden carried.
Yeah, that survivor's guilt is so heavy.
3 years later, in her 2026 memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, she admits to E! News that she is still riddled with guilt over his death. She said she felt it was her job to protect him.
And that guilt is compounded by what Music Times reported about Jansen's life leading up to this. He had stepped away from the Hollywood lifestyle, and he was very open on his own website about suffering from terrible anxiety and depression. He admitted to taking drugs to cope and feeling just incredibly frustrated with the acting business.
He was really struggling to find his footing outside of the industry.
He was. And to heal, he actually turned to art. He created over 50 of these visceral, expressive graffiti paintings as a form of therapy. He was trying to externalize all that internal pain.
But I want to gently push back on Hayden's guilt for a second. If we know the medical examiner confirmed an enlarged heart and a faulty valve, a physical defect, is it common for an older sibling to shoulder the blame anyway?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially one who feels responsible for bringing him into the chaotic entertainment world.
Yes, 100%. If we connect this to the bigger picture, human emotions don't strictly follow medical examiner reports. Guilt gives the brain a false sense of control. If it's her fault, then there's a reason it happened. It's not just a terrifying random universe.
Wow, that makes so much sense. She would rather feel like a failure than feel powerless.
Exactly. Hayden's feelings highlight how profoundly layered trauma truly is. And if you are finding this deep dive insightful, make sure you're subscribed to Starscope Report, because we have even crazier, deeper stories ahead.
Definitely hit that subscribe button. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because that overwhelming guilt didn't just stay trapped as a sad thought in Hayden's mind. It manifested violently in her physical body.
Proving that grief is a physiological event.
Yes. Right after Jansen's private funeral, paparazzi managed to snap and publish these horrific photos of Hayden. And that intrusion triggered a severe bout of agoraphobia.
Her brain literally flagged the outside world as an active threat.
She told People magazine that her body fundamentally changed shape. She said she ballooned out and made it very clear this was not about her diet. It was a massive spike in stress and cortisol.
The mind-body connection here is undeniable.
She described being trapped in this destructive hamster wheel. She felt too insecure about her body to put on clothes and leave the house, but she knew if she didn't move, she would never stop feeling that way.
That hamster wheel is a clinical cortisol trap. Cortisol is the body's primary stress hormone. It's meant to help you outrun a bear for 20 minutes.
Right, the fight or flight response.
Exactly. But prolonged grief keeps the body in a state of high alert for months. It literally alters a person's physical shape. The body starts hoarding resources and storing fat because it thinks it's in a long-term war scenario.
It's as if her body tried to build a physical fortress to keep the paparazzi and the pain out. But that fortress quickly turned into a solitary confinement cell.
That is exactly what happens with severe anxiety disorders like agoraphobia. Your nervous system paralyzes you to keep you safe.
Which is just wild to think about. Later in the episode, we'll talk about the shocking twist and how she actually broke out of that physical prison. It's something you wouldn't expect.
It really is a fascinating mechanism for recovery.
So breaking out of that mental and physical cell required an active intervention. You can't just think your way out of a biological trap.
No, you have to speak to the body in its own language.
And for Hayden, the turning point was meeting a personal trainer named Marnie Alton. But they weren't, doing intense boot camps. We just started going on these beautiful walks.
It's a simple movement.
Yeah. Their workouts became therapy sessions. And through that movement, Hayden finally started releasing these massive expectations she had put on herself since she was a kid.
And there's real neuroscience behind that. When you walk, your eyes scan side to side. It's called optic flow, and it creates bilateral stimulation in the brain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the exact same mechanism used in EMDR therapy, which is the gold standard for trauma treatment. It physically helps move traumatic memories out of the fear center of the brain so they can be processed.
Wait, really? Just walking side to side does that?
It signals to the nervous system that you are no longer frozen. The alarm bells finally turn off.
That is incredible. And you can see the results today in 2026. She is actively reclaiming her life. She's executive producing and starring in a film called Sleepwalker.
Which has a very intense premise.
Very. It's a psychological thriller about a woman descending into darkness and a nightmare world after losing her daughter.
It mirrors her own reality so closely.
It does. So what does this all mean? I have to ask. Is leaning into the exact trauma you've experienced, like making a movie about catastrophic grief? Is that a proven way to process it? Or does it run the risk of re-traumatizing the person?
This raises an important question about agency. Reliving trauma involuntarily is damaging, but converting trauma into art, just like Jansen did with his graffiti, gives a person agency over their pain.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it shifts them from being a victim of the narrative to the author of it. She is in control now.
She is the one pulling the strings. And she is enthusiastically embracing her past, too. She told Extra TV she'd say heck yeah to a Nashville reboot, and she's down for it all if Heroes ever came back.
Her mindset is completely shifted.
She realizes now that flaws are beautiful. They make people relatable.
And if you love hearing these deep dives into how stars rebuild their lives, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next.
Because Hayden's message really brings this whole journey directly to you, the listener. How do you respond when you fall on your face?
Everyone goes through trauma.
Everyone. But surviving is about picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and finding forgiveness for yourself, warts and all.
To summarize this whole deep dive, this is a story of how an invisible physical illness took a beloved brother. It shows how invisible mental anguish nearly broke a sister, and ultimately how the physical act of moving forward helped her reclaim her soul.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over. We constantly talk about the human heart as a metaphor for love and emotion.
Right.
But Jansen tragically passed away because of an enlarged heart, a fatal physical condition. Yet when you look at the beautiful legacy of his art and Hayden's journey of expanding her own capacity for vulnerability and self-forgiveness, the story takes on a new meaning.
It really does.
Perhaps this isn't just a tragedy about a heart that failed. Maybe it's a profound lesson in how a breaking heart can eventually grow large enough to hold both unimaginable grief and a beautiful new life.
That is incredibly powerful.
So what invisible weights are you carrying right now that might actually be an invitation to rebuild yourself, warts and all?
Something we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining. Catch you next time.